On Tech News Today, the FBI blames North Korea for the Sony Pictures hack, the BBC blames Apple for labor woes in Asia, and Google blames Hollywood for conspiring to bring back SOPA. There's plenty of blame to go around next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, December 19th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Braintree. If you're a developer or manager of a mobile app and searching for the right payments API, check out Braintree. Braintree's new V.0 SDK makes it easy to support multiple mobile payment types with one simple integration. To learn more and to try out their sandbox, go to BraintreePayments.com/twit. And by Personal Capital. With Personal Capital, you'll have many more happy holidays as you grow and protect your wealth with this award-winning financial app. Best of all, it's free. To sign up, go to personalcapital.com/TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan. And Jason Cleanthes, are you ready for the holiday?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Yeah, so we're going to take next week off. Twit is going to be closed for the most part. And we've recorded some amazing, wouldn't you agree, Jason, some amazing episodes. And we'll tell you a little bit more about those at the end of the show. But, yeah, I mean, I think those were some killer episodes that we did. What do you think?
I think we did a great job. I think everybody's going to really love them. I think they're not going to want us to come back, and they're just going to hope we have more and more to show.
Or that we just replay those over and over again. Maybe not. Well, we told you yesterday that the Obama administration has concluded that North Korea is behind the Sony Pictures hack, but had not decided on whether or not to publicly reveal their findings. Now the FBI has actually done that. They've officially blamed North Korea for the attack. Everybody's wondering what comes next. What do you do to sort of punish a country that's already under pretty much maximum financial penalties and has no internet infrastructure themselves to counterattack against, and so on. They have no economy to speak of. It's very difficult to do, and also they tend to be vindictive. If they're gonna go this crazy about a comedy, they may go crazy in other ways about any sort of retaliation. But still, something has to be done. We'll see what the Obama administration does now. Well, let's jump into the regular news. The BBC aired a new documentary last night slamming Apple for working conditions. The expose, called Apple's Broken Promises, appeared on the BBC's Panorama show. It claimed that Indonesian mines where Apple sources the tin used in iPhones and other products employs children in dangerous and horrible conditions, and that iPhone factory employees in China are worked to exhaustion. The documentary is supported by video taken secretly by undercover workers sent by the BBC. Ewan Spence wrote about the BBC documentary for Forbes and joins us now. How you doing, Ewan?
Doing very well, thank you very much. And over here in the United Kingdom, we are, of course, ready to take action to America after you guys filmed King Ralph.
Well, I think you absolutely should do something about it, please. Save us all from the scourge of Hollywood and movies like that. In fact, you know, speaking of King Ralph, I mean, I think that... you know, it has to be said that the interview over which this hack is supposedly conducted was an equally horrible movie that would have been buried in the sands of time, but now is becoming famous as the subject of this hack. So we'll see where that goes. But let's talk about the BBC. Do you believe the focus on Apple is fair? And to what extent is one company being blamed for working conditions in China and Indonesia generally?
I think the focus is not fair. To start off with the tin issue, Apple is a very small user of tin. There are lots of companies that use far more tin than Apple, but only Apple was mentioned in that case of that. It is an industry-wide problem, and it was certainly noticeable on social networks, the fact that the BBC promoted the hashtag for this, and that everyone was going, well, what about Samsung? What about Sony? What about all the other companies that use tin in their products? It's sold there. Anything electronic is going to have some elements of tin in there. It makes good copy. Anybody who knows their SEO, anybody who knows their headlines knows that there's a traffic boost if you can say that it's something to do with Apple rather than any other consumer electronics firm on the planet. It makes it sexy. It makes it controversial. And certainly, to myself and many people watching it, that's not what we think the BBC should be doing. It should be I'm not. It should be above that sort of sensationalism, and I think that was the thing that shone through for me. There are huge social and economic issues around consumer electronics as a whole, and Apple is one of those companies. But this was a blunderbuss, and it really, you know, this is a complicated issue that has many layers, and speaks quite simply to the fact that not everybody in the world is equal. Yet the BBC decided, you know what, we're just going to mention Apple. We're just going to say it's Apple, it's Apple, it's Apple, it's Apple, it's Apple. We're in the Pegatron factory. You have a look at Pegatron's clients, and it's pretty much everybody that makes anything.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Ewan, but it also, I found it interesting to get a better peek into these factories where so many of these consumer electronics are made. Jason, can we go to the first video that shows how essentially the managers or whoever it is that's in charge of these armies of employees that work in these factories is essentially cheating. These are new recruits that are starting out, and they're being told to fill out these forms in a specific way. Let's listen to this as well. Okay. Well, no. Okay, so basically what's happening is there's a bunch of people, young people, filling out forms, and it says don't tick the following options that says you're not willing to do certain things. You have to tick the options that say you are willing. If you tick the boxes that say you're not willing, the forms will be canceled. In other words, they're giving options on this official form that provides cover for Pegatron and Apple, but then the employees themselves in reality are being told, do not check those forms. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing in there as well. And let's look at the second video as well. Now, these are this is addressing the claim that factory workers in China that make iPhones and other Apple products are worked to exhaustion. Let's take a look at this one.
So why are the workers so tired?
But essentially what's happening here is that, you know, there's all this, I think they make a good case, Ewan, that there's a lot of cheating going on, that the managers are essentially violating the promises that Apple made about the fact that people won't work overtime unless it's voluntary. This documentary appears to show that there's a lot of non-voluntary overtime. And I agree with you, in the larger scope of labor woes in China and elsewhere and around the world, I'm sure that the vast majority, I mean, these are popular jobs. I'm sure that many Chinese people would love to be willing to be subjected to be pushed around in the way that this video shows. Essentially, they're being ordered around. They're being treated unfairly. They're essentially being ripped off in terms of the overtime they're supposed to get. There's plenty of evidence for that. But what could Apple do? I mean, does Apple need to personally send somebody from Cupertino to go and manage these employees? I mean, what is the solution here for Apple? Clearly, they want to keep their promises. Clearly, it's in their interest to keep, I think, to keep their promises. What do you think that they could and should do?
It's actually an incredibly difficult problem, and this is, I think, the root issue that makes so much problems about a documentary like Panorama has done here, because we do have to take a step back here. The first one is that it's very easy for us here in Western society to look at these factories, to look at these conditions and go, you know what, that's wrong, in a sort of complete moral absolutism view on the thing. And I don't think that you can actually take that. I think we have to look at it relatively. And I'm not belittling any of the examples that were shown on the camera here, but I do want to take a step back. And if I look back to Senator Harkin's bill from 1993 that was brought through the Senate in the US, this was to stop American companies buying in products that have been created through the use of child labor, specifically looking at Bangladesh and Nike. Now, essentially, all the factories fired all the children because otherwise they couldn't do it. And these children, Western society, oh great, they can go to school, they can get an education. In actual fact, they ended up going to much more dangerous factories, much more dangerous occupations, many of them having to earn money on the streets as children. If Apple, as a single company, was to go in and demand certain conditions, I actually think that it would be like a golden ticket. You would raise up one tiny factory so much that it would actually be unworkable. What needs to happen is there needs to be a general rising tide that floats up all of these factories, all of these working conditions, if that is what Western society wants. And that is not something that can happen in a week, in a month, or in a year. It's something that would take at least a decade, if not more. It's worth noting that over the last 6 years, factories such as Pegatron, such as Foxconn, who work on the consumer electronics products such as Apple, and also some of the larger manufacturers such as Samsung, have seen their wages rise by over 110%. So there is this slow lifting up of society. But if you lift up one tiny part of society, it's like handing one person a winning lottery ticket in the middle of a place of desolation. That one person is lifted, but everybody else actually suffers more. It's not an easy problem to solve. Apple's addressed this. They've talked about what they could do. They could go to their tin suppliers and work with illegal tin suppliers that will only supply tin through the conditions. But in the words of Tim Cook, that would be an easy answer. It doesn't solve the underlying problem. They need to work with the Indonesian government. They need to work with the regulators. They need to work throughout the supply chain to lift up the entire conditions of the tin mining industry to bring that. That does not happen overnight. It does not happen over months or years. If we could wave a magic wand, we could probably do that, But to do that, we probably have to lower everybody else's standards in the West. It's a seesaw that if you unbalance, you destroy it. So it has to be brought up very slowly. And I've not even looked in the chat room, but a lot of people going is, you're being an apologist for Apple. But the problem is, this sort of absolutism has been proven in the past to not work and to make conditions worse for the entire society. There has to be another way, and Apple is doing their best with their weight and power to make that change. But it is slow, it takes a long time to gather the momentum, and it's not the sort of thing that makes an easy soundbite that you can pump into a clickbait headline that you can put on primetime television a week before Christmas.
And you did a nice accounting of the kind of criticism that this sort of thing is likely to engender. There's one other criticism or one other solution that's often mentioned, which is that, move the factories out of China into another country, which is fine if you can do it, if you can find a place that can handle the volumes that China can handle with the efficiency and quality of workmanship that Chinese factories are able to do. But that doesn't help the workers in China. They just theoretically would get laid off. I mean, they clearly have chosen those jobs, as bad as they are to us, as better than alternatives that they may have. And so that's another problematic solution, if you will.
These are highly sought after jobs. I think that's one of the more interesting issues. You and I look at that and go, a 16-hour week doing parts. No, not for me. But when you have the choice, I'll go back to Bangladesh, mostly because my wife has done a lot of research in this area, so I'm more familiar with that than with the Apple construction lines. But you wanted to get into the factories that were making clothing, that were working on shoes. Yes, they were dangerous to Western but they were much less dangerous than other factories. If Apple, for example, was to move a factory over to, for example, let's say Texas, Samsung has a chip fabrication factory there that's turning out A9 chips at the moment for Apple. They still have to get the solder from somewhere. They still have to get the solder in the quantities that they need. And they would again have to go back to the supply chain that in this case would work in Indonesia. They take chips from Samsung. They take camera lenses from Sony. What are these companies going to do? Is Apple going to say, well, Sony needs to build a plant now in Nevada so we can make these over here? It just doesn't work. Consumer electronics has built up this entire fabric of construction and manufacturing that only China can do this. I mean, Nokia in their death throes did their best to keep construction going on in Hungary. And it just was not economically possible. Yeah. Even with Hungary being one of the much smaller economies here in Europe, it was, when you have a fiduciary responsibility to minimize costs and maximize revenue,
right, you
have no choice. So you have to just work slowly within the system to bring it up. It's
That's a great point.
When you ask your dad for a car or a game, you didn't just go up. The first time you went up to him as a kid, you went, Dad, gimme, and your dad would go, no. You had to slowly work on him, and then maybe work on Mum a little bit, and then get them to come round to the idea, and then eventually you would get what you wanted. But that would take a long time.
That's perfectly logical. But when I see the conditions of these workers, I do feel guilty. I'm getting great phones and great experience, and I have a great job, and so there is a certain amount of guilt. But I agree with you that the solution is far more complex than just blame Apple.
And we don't see the factories they don't want to work in. If we were to see the factories, for example, that make Christmas decorations, then we might find that they're in a much, much worse situation.
Yeah.
So when you're given that choice, and again, we come back to this documentary from the BBC was very much an absolutist view of consumer electronics, where I think a relativism view is far more appropriate here.
Yeah,
even though to
totally
westernize, it hurts. Either that, or we all have to pay £2,000 for each iPhone.
Yeah, that's right. Ewan Spence is at ewanspence.co.uk, and you can follow him on Twitter at Ewan. That's EWAN. Thank you so much for joining us, Ewan. I'd like to have you on the show again soon.
Indeed. Have a nice Christmas, Merry New Year, and everything else to you all over there.
Same to you. Thanks again. All right, in just a sec, we're going to talk about the big war between Hollywood and Google. But first, I'm going to quickly tell you about Braintree. If you've got a mobile app and you need to add payments to it, Braintree is the best solution. I've told you about this before, but you've got to use Braintree if you've got a mobile app. They support Apple Pay, PayPal, Bitcoin, Venmo, all the major credit cards, all the major debit cards, and 130 global currencies. With Braintree's V.0 SDK, one small snippet of code, and you're up and running in 10 minutes. If you want some help, they'll even handle the integration for you and walk you through it. And they can do that on the phone. They have best-in-class customer service, and you'll always have a live person to talk to. And, of course, the most important thing is that Braintree is super, super secure with tokenized payments. You've got to have tokenized payments if you're going to do any sort of mobile payment solution. So if you're searching for the right payments platform, check out Braintree's V.0 SDK today at braintreepayments.com/twit. Review their documentation, play around in their sandbox, and after you integrate Braintree, the first $50,000 in transactions are fee-free. That's braintreepayments.com/twit. Well, remember SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act? Well, it's supposed to be dead and gone, but now Google claims that the Motion Picture Association of America is heading a campaign to essentially bring it back after email leaked by the Sony Pictures hackers revealed that the MPAA and 6 Hollywood studios have budgeted $1.6 million to revive not SOPA itself, but the objectives of that defeated legislation. The initiative is called Project Goliath, Goliath being a reference to Google. In an open letter posted to Google's public policy blog, Google lawyer Kent Walker called Project Goliath a conspiracy to achieve SOPA's goals through non-legislative means. Google cited free speech as the reason to oppose SOPA and Project Goliath. An MPAA spokeswoman called Google shameful for pretending to be a defender of free speech. Todd Spangler is the New York digital editor for Variety and joins us now. Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks, Mike.
I want to thank you for hanging on. We're going later than I thought we were, and so I apologize for that. Let's start from the beginning. Can you briefly summarize what SOPA was?
SOPA, among other things, would have required search engines to strip out links to sites that trade in piracy. If they were found by a court to be trading in that type of traffic. So it was intended to be, a law that would protect intellectual property, not just the entertainment industry, but intellectual property in the software business and others.
So what did the Sony Pictures hack reveal about the MPAA's plans that Google thought were essentially equated to SOPA?
Well, so first of all, let's point out that the MPAA has not made a secret that it's not very happy with Google and other search engines in how they work or not work to deprioritize or punish, if you will, sites that are primarily piracy sites. The MPAA has constantly railed against Google specifically, saying that they need to do more, and so that part is not new. What Google is concerned about here is that they're saying that these emails that have been released in the wake of the Sony hack show that what the MPAA is doing is lobbying individual states' attorneys general to effectively try to put pressure on ISPs to block access to these kinds of sites.
Now, Mississippi's Attorney General Jim Hood has subpoenaed Google, and Google has asked that the subpoena be thrown out because they claim it's based on MPAA lobbying. Is that a credible objection to the subpoena? Do you think they're going to be successful with that?
Well, his action against Google is not just about entertainment. It involves illegal trafficking in drugs and other things like that. So, you know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the merits of, you know, Attorney General Hood's arguments against Google exactly, and I don't know the merits of Google's claims against him. So I don't really know, but we'll have to see how this all plays out. But clearly, Hood has been a major critic of Google and is trying to get the company to take steps to cut down on some of these illegal activities that he claims Google is facilitating.
Google's critics, including the Jim Hood and also the MPAA, essentially accuse Google of facilitating illegal drug purchasing, human trafficking, fraud, intellectual property theft, and more, and is essentially calling on all and any law enforcement agencies to stop Google's crime wave. It's all a bit much, isn't it?
I agree. The rhetoric sounds pretty strong. You know, I don't know if Google is some sort of crime syndicate. I don't think I personally would go that far. Look, Google says, look, we are enabling access to everything that's on the internet, and we're trying to be a responsible citizen and take steps where we can and where we should and where we're required to by law to make sure that illegal activity doesn't transpire through Google services. Now, what they're saying here is that the Attorney General in this case is overreaching and is trying to take legal actions against the company that are not allowed under current federal law. So that's their argument.
Hollywood sells movies, and there are a lot of pirate sites that give those movies away for free. They're trying to sell a product that is being essentially, in their view, stolen and then made available easily, globally, and for free. And Google is linking to and making it very easy for people to find that. Is it reasonable for Google to call the blocking of piracy websites censorship?
You get into a slippery slope, right, about what is a site, what is a link that directs people to piracy, who makes the determination. You know, there are thousands, if not millions, of links out there that need to be reviewed on a regular basis, and who makes the call about what is legitimate for people to access and what isn't. Sometimes it's pretty clear cut and sometimes it's not. So I think what Google is saying is, look, we don't want this sort of chilling effect where you're going to sort of carte blanche require us to block sites that you deem objectionable. So is it censorship? You know, I think it's a tricky question. You know, Google is not responsible for operating any of these piracy sites. They are really just servicing the web's information. So, you know, do they have a responsibility to work with content owners and intellectual property holders to make that sort of piracy less accessible? You know, I think Google recognizes that, but again, they don't want these sorts of very strict codified rules that will simply wipe out portions of their search engine.
And Google, of course, claims that search engine results are constitutionally protected free speech, and 4 court cases have agreed with that. You never know if another court case in the future may disagree with that. But for now, I think they're on pretty solid ground. Todd Spangler writes at Variety.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at xpangler. That's XPANGLER on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us, Todd.
Thank you, Mike.
Google is planning a future version of Android that would be built directly into cars, according to a Reuters exclusive. The OS would connect the dashboard, entertainment, and communication system to the internet without passing through users' phones. The current version of Android Auto requires a phone connection. The version will be called Android M, according to the report, and it's expected to be unveiled in a year or two. Yahoo's Flickr has stopped selling Creative Commons pictures uploaded to the site after photographers complained about the practice. In a blog post yesterday, the company said it would remove Creative Commons pictures from its online store, which is called Flickr Wall Art, and refund money received from the sales. Flickr had been selling canvas prints of photos at $49 a pop, and the options included some 50 million pictures with a Creative Commons license, a designation that enables free distribution of copyrighted works. Flickr sold images that did not have a non-commercial restriction. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is taking the NSA to court today over mass surveillance. The EFF will argue that NSA surveillance amounts to searches without warrants and are therefore a violation of the Fourth Amendment. The lawsuit was filed long before the Edward Snowden revelation, in 2008, in fact, after a former AT&T tech showed evidence that the company siphoned off its internet traffic to the NSA. The hearing today is for a federal judge in Oakland to consider the EFF's request to make a judgment on the case already. Sounds reasonable enough to me. Well, in just a sec, we're going to do a follow-up on Amazon's one-hour delivery in New York City. But first, I want to tell you about Personal Capital. New Year's Eve is coming. You're going to make a New Year's resolution. Why not make a resolution to use Personal Capital and get your financial house in order? It's a great idea because Personal Capital will not only essentially get you ahead financially immediately by saving you on unnecessary fees, but it's free, so it costs nothing to do, and it's easy to set up. It's free, easy. It's actually enjoyable to use because it's really quite a rush, actually, to plug in all your financial information and see it all in one place. You can just look at a graph that's like, this is your financial situation. You can monitor it over time and see what's working, what isn't working, and you can make better decisions about your money, whether it's better decisions about investments, better decisions about where to put your money and how to manage it. They also have fantastic apps for mobile devices and even an Android Wear app, so you get buzzed on your wrist when you need to take action on your money. It's just a fantastic, fantastic service. So make taking control of your financial future one of your resolutions for 2015. Personal Capital gives you total clarity and transparency to make better decisions right away. Set up your free account. Go to personalcapital.com/TNT. Personal Capital is free, and it's the smart way to grow your money. And we thank Personal Capital for their support of Tech News Today. Well, journalist Devindra Hardawar, who's been on this show many times, and he's now at Engadget, tested Amazon Prime Now, the one-hour delivery service we told you about, which rolled out this week in New York City. He ordered candy, and he received it 23 minutes later. 23 minutes to get a sugar rush. That's like pretty amazing. That's the quickest Amazon delivery I have ever heard about. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Jack Prindle in Union, Kentucky. Jack posted this picture on Twitter, and I'm counting 7 screens on his desk with 2 of them running Tech News Today. That's 2 down and 5 more to go. We want to see Tech News Today on all of those screens. Why not? Saturation coverage. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we'll find it. That is the Tech News Today. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, RSS. So many options. Choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. You can also follow us on Twitter. Tech News Today TV is our Twitter name. And please send us your thoughts and opinions by email to tnt@twit.tv or voicemail at 260TNT Show. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. And remember that next week we'll air our pre-recorded holiday specials. In those episodes, I'll talk to some of the most brilliant minds in journalism about 5 of the most controversial news stories of the year. So don't miss our special coverage all week. We'll return to our regular live coverage on Monday, December 29th. We'll see you then. Happy holidays.